if you know how to see photographically, you can get by with a phone and still do a fantastic work. Whereas if you're very technical, but you have no vision, you can have a technically perfect photograph of something really boring. So anyone can learn the technical aspect of photography. That's the easy part. And I always tell my students, don't worry so much about the technical aspect because that's easy to learn. Just learn to see.
Hey, welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Raymond Hatfield, and each week I interview one of the world's most interesting photographers to learn what it really takes to capture beautiful images so that you can start to do the same. In today's Rewind episode, we are chatting with street photographer Valerie Jardin about building confidence so that you can start shooting life on the street. But first, the Beginner Photography Podcast is brought to you by CloudSpot. CloudSpot has everything you need to build a thriving photography business. You can impress your clients, deliver a professional experience, and streamline your whole client workflow in just one platform. So grab your free forever account today over at deliverphotos.com and only upgrade when you are ready. You know, one of the things that I hear from listeners like yourself is just how much easier it would be to take great photos if they lived in some tropical community or a large city that, never sleeps. It's going 24/7. And while, okay, sure, that would make it easier, for the majority of us, that's not where we live. That doesn't mean that we should just give up on photography. In fact, today's guest, Valerie Jardin, who is honestly one of the most incredible street photographers who I know, is going to show you how great images aren't just about the surroundings where you're at, but they're about building images with intention and putting in the time behind the camera and maybe investing in a really good pair of walking shoes. And as always, stick around to the end for this week's photography action item because, well, this podcast is not just some passive thing that you do to waste your time. I understand that you take learning photography seriously, and these action items are my way of helping to boil down a lot of info into just one thing that you need to do each week that is going to move the needle forward in your photography. So stick around for that. So now let's just go ahead and get on into today's interview with Valerie Jardin. Today's guest is Valerie Jardin, a street photographer with more than 20 years of experience. A born artist, her bio says, while other kids had posters of rock stars on their walls, I framed photos from my favorite photographers. She's also the host of the popular Hit the Streets podcast. And today, I'm excited to find out what those 20 years have taught her about shooting the streets. Valerie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. Well, it's not 20 years of street photography. It's 20 years of photography experience. So
there you go.
A lot before.
And that's kind of one thing that I definitely want to get into first. But as I mentioned there in the bio, you said that you had posters from professional or framed photos of professional photographers on your wall, but you also say that you weren't really into photography at the time. So
no, not at all.
I want to know why those photos were drawn to you to put them on your wall, and when did you realize that you were into photography?
Okay. Yeah, it started really late for me. But growing up in France, you have Robert Doisneau and Cartier-Bresson as inspiration. You kind of grew up with those pictures anyways. And I always had prints, not original prints, unfortunately, but prints of their famous photographs, whether it was prints that I would cut from a calendar that I would have of Doisneau or something. And that's how I decorated my room. So did they have an influence on me early on? Possibly, but I was not into photography at the time, but I loved street photography and documentary photography. But I didn't become a photographer till my 20s. So yeah.
Now, you said that you were interested in street photography at the time. What specifically do you think at a young age drew you to this style of photography?
Oh, I think it was just very romantic. The lovers in Paris. And I know a lot of my friends. I mean, I wasn't like an oddball or anything. It was kind of a normal thing as a young French woman to be drawn to that kind of art. And a lot of my friends also had those type of photographs in their home. I guess it's more a cultural thing. Yeah.
Right. So when was it that the photography really stuck with you if you weren't into photography at such a young age?
Well, I was exposed to it. So my dad, when I was growing up, was an pretty avid nature and wildlife photographer, hobbyist, but nevertheless, there were many mornings where I'd get up super early to go with him and wait for the fox to come out the den to photograph him. I wasn't interested in the photography aspect of it, but I liked that hunting part of photography. And it's not until I moved to the States in my mid-20s that I actually started looking into it. And I was actually first drawn to nature and wildlife because I'm in Minnesota. And the photographer that inspired me when I moved here was Jim Brandenburg, the famous National Geographic wolf, very famous for his wolf photography, Northwoods. And that's the photography that just stuck with me at first. I said, oh, I'm in the best place to do wildlife because we have wolves, we have bears, we have so much wildlife here in Minnesota. And I thought I could do that. Yeah, I could, except then I had kids, and it's not easy to do wildlife photographies with 2 young kids with you. So I did a little bit, but quickly shifted gear into other things that I could do with the family in tow for my early years as a photographer.
So in the beginning, you just started pursuing photography once you moved to Minnesota purely as a hobby, kind of to bring that feeling back of you and your dad together?
Well, maybe, but it quickly, I mean, within a year, actually, I was making money with my photography. So it went really, really quickly. I was photographing children and friends, and going through the prairie grass, that really natural photo documentary type of portraiture that was very new back then. I mean, the portraits at the time, it was like sitting on a fake log or big crayon at JCPenney or, Walmart.
Those big crayons. They get
You
me
remember
every time.
that?
Oh, I got photos. Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
So when I photographed my friends' children and they put the pictures on their walls, it was film at the time, and I would give them the prints. Then people started noticing, like, oh, this is really cool. Well, it's a picture of your family, but it looks like art, doesn't look like a family picture. And at the time, nobody else did that. Then I started getting a lot of requests from friends of friends. And I said, oh, sure, I can charge you for that. and it worked. So I worked as a portrait photographer doing that kind of work for a few years, even opened a studio for a while, and decided I didn't like to photograph kids in studio because it's like bringing them into a dentist office or a doctor's office. And I had unlimited patience with my own children, but not so much with other people's children. That I decided that, doing family portraits and children portraiture was only going to be a short-lived thing. And I actually converted my studio into a product studio. So I did a lot of product photography and shifted to the commercial side of photography pretty quickly, doing products. And one thing led to another. And I was shooting interiors for big hotels and things like that. So I pretty much shot it all except for fashion. I think I've pretty much tried everything, which I think is awesome because you learn so much. And you can't say, no, I don't want to do this unless you tried. So I tried a lot of things. I was pretty good at most of it, but I didn't like a lot of it. So I only did what I love to do because I really believe that to be good at something, you have to love it. And if it's a chore or a job as an artist, and if it feels like a chore, you're not going to do it with your heart. Yeah.
I try to stress that a lot on the podcast as well, especially when you're starting out. You should really try to shoot everything possible because there are photographers out there, and I use this as an example, but I know a photographer who I knew when I first started in photography, who only shot clear liquids. That was his thing. It was only clear liquids. See-through, not like clear green, clear liquids, water, vodka, like those types of liquids. That's all that he did. And I thought to myself, when I first figured that out, or when I first learned of him, was like, how do you even get into that? Surely you don't grow up as a kid thinking like, gosh, I could just shoot water and vodka like all day long. It's one of those things that progresses. You shoot a range of things and then suddenly it sticks for you. But I kind of want to go back to your story here. You said that you picked up a camera there, and then within a year you were photographing kids and stuff. When you first picked up that camera, were you already competent with a camera, or did you have to learn?
Nope. I was in full auto for a long time because, and yet that's why the vision is so much more important, because you can, if you know how to see photographically, you can get by with a phone and still do a fantastic work. Whereas if you're very technical, but you have no vision, you can have a technically perfect photograph of a boring of something really boring. So anyone can learn the technical aspect of photography. That's the easy part. And I always tell my students, don't worry so much about the technical aspect because that's easy to learn. Just learn to see. And I think some of it is innate, but you can learn. I mean, I've seen some of my students over the years that produce some pretty phenomenal work now, and I saw them at their early stages. So you can learn, even if it's not something that you're born with. You can certainly learn to become a better photographer. But the technical part is always the easy part. And surprisingly enough, that's what intimidates a lot of people from jumping into that field. Mm-hmm.
Sure, it's a lot of numbers. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
It can be intimidating.
Yeah.
So how did you do it? Was it books? Was it just
no, trial and error.
Trial and error.
Yeah.
I love it. I love
yeah.
it. Okay, so we're kind of at this point to where now you have this commercial photography studio, right? Was it in the early 2000s?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had this commercial photography studio, and now today you're very well known for your street photography. Where did the transition happen, and what was it that inspired you to go in that direction?
Well, I was shooting personal projects throughout because I really feel that, and I've written a lot about that actually, I really feel that you need to feed your creative soul and not work for clients all the time, especially when you work for clients. That's even more important to just work on personal projects where you don't have to produce work for somebody else and follow somebody else's direction. So it was really important for me to keep shooting. And I was traveling back and forth since I was born and raised in France and I'm a French citizen. I was traveling back and forth to France a lot, even with the kids, and actually always with the kids for 17 years straight. But I always did photography there. And that's when I actually discovered street photography. I started photographing candid scenes of everyday life with my camera when I was traveling, but never here in Minneapolis. I didn't think there was anything interesting here. I didn't see anything interesting. And I guess I developed it not knowing I was developing my street photographer skills over the years. And then one day, actually, someone said, why don't you teach this? You're really good at it. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't really want to teach it. I was thinking teaching like in a classroom. It's like, no, I mean, you have to be on the street. And then I thought, well, why not? After all, I could bring people to Paris and teach them the skills to be better photographers on the streets where street photography was born. And so that's how I started. So that was 8 years ago. I did one full, and it was all inclusive at the time. I didn't start with one day here locally. I started with a full week, all inclusive workshop, accommodations and luxury accommodations and everything.
Oh my gosh.
And it sold. At the time where most of my colleagues who had been doing that for a while were telling me, no, we're not selling right now. It's not selling. Don't start now because you're going to get discouraged if it doesn't fill up. It filled up. Actually, I had a bunch of people on the waiting list. So it was a good start. And so I went to Paris, did the 1 week workshop, was a big success and learned a lot. So the following year, I had 9 workshops and they all sold. And that was it. That year, I quit all my clients. I left all my commercial clients and decided this is what I'm going to do. And no more working for clients, no more compromising. I'm shooting just for me and going to build my brand that way. And it was word of mouth and repeat customers and word of mouth. And now I'm 8 years later. I think I had 13 workshops in 2018. I think I have 11 right now for sale in 2019. A lot of them are sold out. And I may add 1 or 2. I just go where I want to go.
Yeah.
And then people come and meet me in Paris from Australia or South Africa or England for a week or a weekend. Sometimes it's just a weekend. I have a lot of weekends in the US and I love every minute of it because that is not an easy way to make a living. It's really, really hard. I mean, it's intense. Sometimes I have 9 straight days of workshop. And not only you have to love to teach, you wear a lot of hats when you're doing workshops. And it's extremely difficult and you really have to love it. It's kind of like wedding photography. You have to love it or you're going to be miserable.
You got to have the right intentions for sure.
Yeah. So that's how it started. And I'm still doing it. Love it. Love it. I would never do it if I didn't love it as much as I do. And then I write books. I've been podcasting for 4.5 years, almost 5 years now. And I speak at conferences and teach webinars. And so it's all photography goodness.
Yeah. If you had to take just a ballpark guess, How many people do you think have been through your workshops?
Oh, it's got to be close to 1,000
Okay, so
now.
out
Yeah.
of those 1,000 people, what do you think is the biggest misconception they have when they show up to your workshops about street photography?
Oh, a lot of people don't realize how difficult it is and how addicting it is. A lot of people, and the way the workshop is designed, it doesn't matter what your level is. It's really about seeing. So they have to come with a certain knowledge of their camera to be able to take control. I mean, if it's minor, they don't have to come and know how to shoot panning on the street. That I'll teach in the field. It's not something you can learn from a book, but they have to have good knowledge of the camera. Although a lot of time people come with a brand new camera, although I tell them, please don't bring a brand new camera on the workshop. Know how to use it.
Yeah.
It has to become an extension of you. And sometimes the idea that street photography means being in people's faces when it does not. That's one way to do it, but it's not for everyone. And I totally discourage people who don't feel comfortable getting super close on people's face to do it, because they're going to ruin the whole genre for everybody else if everybody does that. So it's not for everyone. Some people prefer an interaction with their subject. Some people prefer a little more minimalist approach. So I think there is a way to approach it that's going to fit the student's personality to start. And then yes, they will want to get closer. They will want to try new things, but they don't have to jump into being in people's faces right away, because that has to be done well and respectfully. And it's usually not something you want to do if you don't feel comfortable doing.
Right, right. So if there's, like you said, kind of several different types of street photography that you could practice, getting up close in somebody's face or taking a much more candid approach. What would you say overall, though, is the job description of a street photographer?
Well, it's really recording everyday life. And it's not just, there's also the misconception of, well, it's just people walking across the street. Well, no, it's not. You have to be really discerning. You have to be extremely discerning. And that's one thing that most street photographers at first, they're not discerning. It's like, okay, there's somebody moving, there's a street, there's a subject. And it's like, well, what was interesting about that person? I mean, no offense, but there is nothing there. It's a boring subject wearing boring clothes and with a boring backdrop. I mean, you have to have a lot of elements come together. That's why it's so difficult, because you only have control over your vision and your gear. You have control over nothing that's happening on the street. I never stage anything. I mean, it's always 100% candid. And I always explain to my students, you always have to go for a story first. The backdrop may not be the best. The light may not be the best. But if you have a beautiful moment, a beautiful story, you have something. If you have a great background and you ruin it with a boring subject, you have nothing. So sometimes all the elements will come together, but that happens a few times in a lifetime of a photographer. So I think it's always resetting their expectations, especially if they've been doing other genres of photography, such as landscape, where they actually can take their time. They're on a tripod. They can come back. Here you have a fraction of a second to immortalize something that's never happened and will never happen again. That's it. That's all you have. So you have to move really, really quickly. You have to think quickly. And you have to let go of the notion of perfection, which is difficult for a lot of photographers who are experiencing other genres of photography. It's that notion of perfection, because in street photography, it's usually the imperfection that creates an emotional response.
Wow. That's going to be a memorable quote from this episode right there.
Okay, good.
That was good. So I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around street photography a little bit. As a wedding photographer and somebody who doesn't shoot street, can you walk me through how you go about shooting street? You said that you don't plan anything out, you don't create anything, you don't interact with it. So when you decide to go out, do you walk out of the house with a specific photo in mind, or is it all up to just being in the right place at the right time and hoping that you get something? And if you don't, well, at least you weren't behind a desk all day.
That's right. No, actually, so first, if you have a specific picture in mind, that's somebody else's shot. It's not yours. If you have a specific image in mind that you've seen, probably something you've seen, then it's not yours. And so I try not to. But then once I'm on a location, I usually hit the street depends on the light. So I'll follow the light if I have some interesting light, like a lot of light and shadow. So that will probably be what I'm going to follow first. If it's an overcast day, I'm going to have to get closer to people and be more in tune with expressions and gesture because I have nothing in the light that's going to be exciting. So it's a little more difficult. When you have light, harsh light, you're going to make more exciting photographs no matter what. It's easier then. If you have overcast condition and you don't have the spectacular dramatic light to save you, like harsh shadows and harsh and light shafts and so forth, then you're going to have to work a little harder. I like to be surprised. That said, I do have several projects that I always have in the back of my mind. I have a project about street dogs. I have a project about stories of hands, which is only getting close to people's hands. So I'm always looking for hands that are doing something different. I shoot within inches from people. So if I'm at a market or a busy area, I'll focus on that because I'm more of a minimalist photographer. So if it's crowded, I'll probably focus on something specific and work on a project. But I don't go with a picture in mind. But once I'm at a location, for example, I find this really amazing shaft of light and I know I only have minutes because that light is going to disappear, then I will visualize what would make the strongest possible shot. And it may or may not happen, but I'm not going to settle. If the perfect subject doesn't come through that light before that light disappears, I'm not going to get the shot. I prefer not get the shot than get a mediocre shot. And that's something that takes a long time to discipline yourself to do. A lot of time, there's this amazing backdrop, and then I see my students, I point out the backdrop, and I usually work with them one-on-one or two of them at a time when we're in an interesting area, and I go back and forth to them and point things out, and they see this amazing backdrop. And then they grab a picture, and I said, wait, what did you take a picture of? Well, yeah, look, there was somebody came through. I'm like, okay, this is a person with uninteresting clothes with a backpack, which creates kind of not a very elegant subject. And really nothing. If the light hits their face, it doesn't hit the face. It'll hit the back of their head or something. So the light was good, the background is good, but you settled for an interesting subject. I said, no, you stay longer. You have 10 more minutes of that light here. In 10 minutes, somebody much better, much more fitting for that environment may come through. If you're in Paris or Rome, you're not going to photograph a tourist, right? You're going to photograph somebody who belongs in that spot. So it's really about being discerning. That's why your rate of success is so low. But I prefer coming home with 10 pictures on my card, 10 pictures that I want to look at, then 500 and then trash 490 of them.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty much what it's going to be. On a good day, if you come back with one picture you actually want to keep, that's really good. And people have to be comfortable with that. And that's difficult for photographers. I mean, some of my colleagues actually ask their students to take 100 pictures and delete 99 of them. And be that specific. It's a good exercise, actually. So
wow. So wait until you get home to delete those 99 photos to pick
I guess
the one?
so. I don't know. I don't ask my students to do that, but I tell them there is nothing. If there is nothing there, just delete.
Yeah.
You didn't catch the moment. And sometimes they say, but I saw something. I said, good. That's half the work right there. You didn't catch it. That's okay. You learn because you saw it. And that's more than 99% of the people out there can say, because people look, but they don't see. And when you see that special moment, that special gesture, that special expression in somebody's face, the light that just hits the face of a beautiful woman sitting at a cafe, if you see that, even if you don't capture it, but you saw it, you learned something. And no matter what, you're better equipped at catching it the next time something like that happens. It's never going to be that moment, but there will be other moments with a similar situation. And just learning what you could have done better that day to get it will teach you how to get it next time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Practice makes perfect. That's what they say.
That's right.
So
at least better.
At least better. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. That's
right. And it's okay to come back empty. I think it's better to come back empty, but knowing that you learned something, you saw something that you missed, rather than come back with a bunch of mediocre shots.
Right. So it sounds like there is a lot of downtime when you go out to shoot street photos. When you go out, is the first thing that you're looking for, like you mentioned, is it the light and then just waiting for something to happen in front of you?
Not necessarily. I'll follow the light, but you have to be patient. And if you keep moving, it's probably not going to be a good day, depending on the city. For example, New York City, you have to let people come to you more because there's always something happening in New York. Same in Paris, actually, depending on the season. But if it's quieter, then you'll walk more. But you need to always be in tune what's happening around you. I always say it'd be really difficult to pickpocket a street photographer because seriously, we have eyes behind our head.
Now, are you always on the move? Are you walking within like a few 100 feet or so, or are you standing
No,
still?
I'll go for miles. No, I'll walk miles and miles and miles a day. The most important piece of gear for a street photographer are shoes. I mean, honestly, I spend more money on shoes and good shoes, not girly shoes, street shoes than I do on gear on any given year because that's really the most important part, the comfort of being able to walk 10, 15 miles a day with your camera. So go light, small camera if you can. I mean, go with whatever you have, but just don't bring extra lenses or extra gear, just extra batteries, and you're good to go. Yeah.
When do you know when to call it quits?
Oh, I never do. I never put the camera in the bag.
Let me reframe the question. When you've been in a location, nothing is happening, do you wait until something happens, or at what point do you say, you know what, I'm calling it a day?
It all depends. I mean, sometimes, of course, if it's on workshop, that's different. I'm more talking about when I'm on my own.
Yeah.
If I just have 10 minutes before I meet a friend, I'm going to make use of those 10 minutes. If I'm at the airport between flights, I'll have my camera out. So it all depends how much time I have. If the spot is so amazing and I know I'm not going to have an opportunity to come back, I have unlimited patience, and I'm not a patient person. I'm French, and like I'm not a patient driver, for example. I drive with flashing my brights all the time, which Americans don't like.
No,
really
typically, yeah, we don't handle criticism very well, and that's what the brights do.
But on the street, if I find a great spot and I'm determined to not settle, and I'm not going to press the shutter unless the best possible case scenario happens, then I could be there for an hour at that street corner or until security tells me to leave.
How often does that happen?
It all depends. It happens more in the US cities than anywhere else. And it's not because of the photography. It's not because we're photographing people. It's because of the buildings.
I see.
Yeah. Like in Minneapolis, we have a skyway system and security doesn't want you to photograph the structure. And so they tell you to leave. But I usually wait till they come a second time. By then, hopefully I have my shot.
Wait for the second time. I guess that kind of brings up some questions about legalities in dealing with street photos. I'm sure that that's something that you have to deal with when taking photos of strangers or locations. But I've heard conflicting, like, well, if you're in a public place, anything goes. Can you kind of walk me through some of the legalities that you have to deal with?
Yeah, well, it all depends on the country, but even people have really misconception of what, the privacy laws are all about. And I use the same approach anywhere, whether I'm in Australia, in the US, in France, in Italy, it doesn't matter. I'm respectful. I don't photograph people in embarrassing or vulnerable situations or in situations of ridicule. Usually I'm invisible. And in most places, even with strict, so quote unquote, strict privacy laws, which are very gray to start with, they would have to prove that you're doing damage to them to even have a case. And so in the US, any public place is fine. You don't have a copyright on your face. That said, you cannot photograph somebody in their backyard. That would be
quite an invasion of privacy.
Yeah. But even then, there was this photographer in New York that was just across the street from a building that was all glass, and he was photographing people in their homes. And they took him to court, or her, I don't remember. That was a few years ago. And they lost. I mean, the law sided with the photographer because they were not really recognizable. I mean, yes, they were in their private homes, walking through their apartments, but there was no harm done.
So when does something like this come up? Does it come up when you're taking the photo, or does it come up when you try to make money off of the photo?
Well, I only photograph for fine art and editorial, so I don't sell products with my photos. Of course, if you were to use your street photography as stock photography to use the people, like you can use a photograph of somebody walking down the street to sell insurance on a billboard, for example, then you would definitely need not only a release from the subject, but also usually a witness or two. So it's pretty complicated. Street photographers shoot for themselves and fine art. So normally for those two, editorial and fine art, you don't need a release from people. And seriously, no one objects. If you do it right and do it respectfully, even if someone notices that you took a picture and comes to you, just explain what you're doing. I'm documenting life, everyday life. And it's so beautiful. Everyday life on the streets of New York or Paris. You're not doing anything wrong. You actually you have to take your job as a street photographer seriously, because look at the photographs of some of the masters, even Vivian Maier, her photographs that were discovered after she died even. How amazing to have that to go back as a historical value point of view. So if you look at what you do as valuable that way, it's important to do it right. If we don't do what we do, all we'll have of the year 2019, 18, 19, and a few years before are selfies of people or surveillance footage. So I think it's really important to do it, and to do it respectfully, and to do it well. I take that seriously. I hope that my photographs someday, in 50 years, 100 years, people will look back and say, wow, look at those cars. Look how people were dressed at the time. How cool is that? Like we do when we look at the work of photographers from 50 years or more ago. And I think we don't look at it thinking, oh, man, that was really close to their private. There was an invasion of their privacy. Look, there are people kissing, blah, blah, blah. Well, if they're kissing in the public place, they're fair game to me. So
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think of as well, as I love looking at those old photos. My grandmother used to take a ton of photos, and every time we'd get together, I'd always go through her photo albums. And what would always stand out to me were how people were dressed and the cars on the street, because it's just something that you can't see today, right?
Exactly.
All of those cars out there. So I guess kind of what I think about is, how do you preserve those memories for the future? Because if you just go out there, you take these photos, you leave them on a hard drive, we leave this earth, what happens at that point? The photos are just gone. Is there anything that you do to kind of ensure that the human race has a copy of your documentation?
Yeah, well, I print. I have books. I'm actually going to have a fine art book of some of my Paris photographs coming up this spring. I have some ebooks, which probably doesn't gonna help. This is not going to help in the long run. But print books are good. And then printing, it's really important to print. And I always encourage people to say, print your best shot of every month, so that at the end of the year you can look back and see how much you've grown in your art. And it's great to have a selection of 12 photographs at the end of the year that you can actually be proud of, and maybe one or two of them will be worthy to be on a wall. So in street photography, that's not as easy as it looks. But in any types of photography, I think it's important to print and have that tangible print in your hands.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kind of side question. Say that you were to go out, what would you say about is the average of how long you go out with a camera and shoot?
If I'm by myself, I was just in Havana just for me. It was just me trip, my reward at the end of a busy workshop season. So I spent 6 days, but 4 full days in Havana and 2 days of travel with my camera. And I was out from morning till night. Very few breaks, there's walking. And it's really one thing leads to another, and then you have elements, serendipity comes into play, and then you meet someone and you walk into somebody's home, and then you have this amazing light, an amazing story, and you shoot. So I'm completely tireless. When I'm in Paris on my own, I'll do 15 plus miles on a day by myself, less with students. But actually, I probably do it just as much, but I'm kind of zigzagging from student to student. So I usually double the mileage that they do. But you walk slower, because first of all, if you walk too fast, you will If you stop, you see something and you stop, you're going to draw attention because you make that sudden stop. So walk slowly when you're in an area that's really rich in potential. Then you walk slowly and you don't want to miss a thing. And you do a lot of back and forth and circling. And it'll be really interesting to actually see the itinerary of a street photographer on any given day from outer space.
Yeah. From a GPS standpoint, I'm sure
that
you can
person
download
must
that
be
Google info.
lost. And I call it getting lost on purpose. Really, that's what you need to do, I think, on the streets. Just let the streets surprise you.
So you talked there about walking slower.
Mm-hmm.
You talked earlier about learning to see photographically, and you talk about that on your website. Your website says that photographers need to shoot with more intent and make decisions before they press the shutter. And they do that by learning to see photographically. What do you mean by seeing photographically, and how do we start doing that?
Well, first of all, don't rely on post-processing. I'm actually working on a project right now, The Artist in the Space. It's a personal project. It's kind of a way to feed my creative soul in between workshops when I'm in Minneapolis in the winter month. And I photograph artists in their space. And the goal is to not spend more than 5 seconds on any of the photograph, if any post-processing at all. And half of the photographs that I've produced so far, and I just photographed number 6 in the series yesterday, the musicians, half of them have absolutely no post-processing. I shoot JPEG and I make the decision in camera before I press the shutter. And I think that's important. Even if you shoot raw, even if you can process those files to death, if that's your thing, I mean, go ahead. It's not mine. I'm happy when they come out just right. You should always aim at cropping in camera, getting the right frame, the best frame possible. So practice. It's harder to do on the street because obviously things are moving. But you can start by practicing in your house even. Just take an object, put it somewhere where the light is actually challenging, and then shoot it like backlit and making all the settings work in camera and see if you can actually make it happen without having to do any post-processing at all. And I shoot JPEG only. I haven't shot a RAW file in about 3 or 4 years now. I shoot JPEG in my Fujifilm camera because the JPEGs are better than I could replicate from a RAW file. And it's street photography. There's nothing you can do to a photograph to make it good if it's not good to start with. The raw file really would, and I print really big from a JPEG. That's another misconception. And so why have all those raw files when I don't need them?
Right. Yeah. Especially if there's no intent to edit them, for sure. Is what you're saying to learn how to see more photographically? Does that just come purely out of experience of shooting in bad light and poor conditions?
Well, it's actually doing simple exercises. Just pick any object or walk down the street and make something very ordinary exciting. What are you going to do? Are you going to stand on that bench? Are you going to go underneath? How are you going to make that park bench exciting? What's an old park bench? How to make the extraordinary look, how to make the ordinary look extraordinary. And so using difficult lighting situation will make anything look better. I mean, if you shoot backlit and have some bright highlights and deep shadows, creates a mood. And those are some of my favorite conditions. And it's definitely more challenging than shooting in overcast weather when you have really even light. But that, to me, that's kind of boring. So always challenge yourself. And one exercise that anyone can do is really to make something ordinary look extraordinary without going into post-processing, and look for a certain angle. The more you work your frame, the less you'll have to do it as you learn. Sometimes I tell my student, okay, there's this really cool thing. I don't know, it could be like an old shutter, lots of texture on a brick wall. Okay, make that shutter look better than it even looks on the wall. Really work it to death. Shoot at different angles, different ways, different apertures, work it until you get comfortable that you know exactly when you see that item, whatever it is, that object, you know exactly what you need to do to make the strongest possible photograph. But that comes with experience. So in order to get there, you need to work it. And then until you get to that point where you'll see an object or a scene or whatever, and you know exactly the angle that you need to shoot it to make the strongest possible photograph. So
I love that. Nice and simple. Like you said, anybody can do that. Anybody can find something around their house that is boring.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I shoot around my house all the time. There's not a day that I don't see amazing light on my windowsill or the lines from the vertical blinds cast a shadow on an object. And I'll grab that shot. I'll never show it. I'll never post it, but I practice. I saw and I captured it. And I had a whole series for a while called actually Ordinary Objects Are Beautiful. And that was the whole point. I would do it every day and I would post one a week and the story behind it. And it's a fun project. There's so many things people can do that doesn't require any traveling at all.
Sure, yeah. However, I think travel is one
Pretty
of the
cool.
big, yeah, one of the perks for sure. One thing I want to know, and it's as a wedding photographer, I make my money because couples find me, they give me money for a certain job, I do that job, and then I deliver it. When it comes to street photography, I know that you do a lot of workshops and you have books, but if somebody's getting started in street photography, can you just kind of walk me through how, I guess, an average street photographer would even go about making any sort of income?
You can't. You really have to do it for you. It's something you do for yourself. And that is so important. No matter what, you should shoot for you. You shouldn't even think of an audience. And I shoot for myself. I teach workshops because people want to learn techniques and they want to see me shoot on the street and learn. But that said, I don't shoot for an audience either. I shoot for me. And that really is something that's so important. You can't shoot for likes on social media. You have to shoot for yourself. Otherwise, you'd always shoot, if you shoot for the likes or for what's trending, you're not going to be happy. You have to do what works for you. Make yourself happy. Yeah, so you can teach and sell prints. But even then, I mean, I do sell prints, but it's a full-time job to sell prints. If you want to get your name out there, and I really don't have time, I do have prints available and they sell. Collectors buy them once in a while and it's great. You feel pretty good when you're shipping a print to the other side of the world, but it's difficult. People don't usually put a photograph of a stranger on their wall unless there is a really big name attached to that print. Mm-hmm. So there's fine art street photography that will be a little more subtle or artsy, or how could I say, like silhouettes may sell better than, a facial expression on a stranger because it's a little more anonymous. But it's, again, you're not going to make a living selling fine art prints of your street photography. But, it's fun. It's fun to try. Yeah. You do it for yourself.
I love that.
I think every street photographer that I know is so passionate about what they do. They're so addicted to it. I don't think they care if they make money out of it or not. It sure wasn't my goal. I don't do anything for that. I only do things that I love doing. So I could still be working for clients shooting interiors, but I don't. I just love teaching and sharing.
Yeah, I love it. I think that sometimes can be, like this lofty idea. You know what I mean? Like, if you shoot it, they will come. And I like the approach that you're taking, is that, like, don't shoot for anybody else. Don't shoot for an audience. Shoot for yourself. And if they like it, then they will come, essentially. But
that's right. Yeah.
When it comes to street photography, as a wedding photographer, I show up to every wedding with quite a bit of gear. It's very heavy. I bring an assistant with me to take care of some of that gear. As a street photographer, this is one thing that I get questions about in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group. What sorts of gear, and we don't really talk a lot about gear on this podcast, as I'm sure you know, it's not as important as a lot of beginners put the weight on it. But what sorts of gear are you showing up with? How much do you need, and how little can you get away with?
Go out with your phone. I mean, honestly, I actually have some workshop students that will come with a DSLR because that's what they've been shooting with and that's all they have. And then they see the advantage of having something smaller and less conspicuous, and they will go out with their phone for a day. Yeah. And then they get the best shots because they could get a little closer and it's an extension of them. I mean, talk about limitations, although they're getting fancier and fancier. But I shoot with one camera, one lens. It's actually a rangefinder type camera with a 23 millimeter lens. I can't change the lens. That camera is an extension of me, and that's the best case scenario. I used to shoot with a DSLR. I mean, I started with a 5D Mark II, but then I would use like a 40 millimeter, like the pancake lens, something that would make my camera the smallest possible. And now we have the advantage of having cameras that are amazing. I mean, really amazing. Better than my X100F is better than my 5D Mark II was.
Yeah.
And amazing cameras that are completely silent, that look like old cameras that nobody's going to feel threatened by or even pay attention to. And so we have gear that makes our life a lot easier on the streets for sure. But whatever you have, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? Start with whatever you have, but soon you'll realize that if you really want to get into this, lighter is going to be better because you're going to be out there for so long. You never bring extra lenses on the street. Really, the only thing you should worry about is extra batteries and maybe an extra card. But like for me, I shoot JPEG, so 32 gig will last me several weeks.
Month, yeah. You talked there about the lens that you bring. It's just a 23 mil lens that's attached to the camera. And we're talking Fuji. You're a Fuji photographer like myself. Yep. And that 23 millimeter lens is the equivalent to a 35 millimeter on a full frame sensor. And some beginners have questions about, is that too wide? Should they go with something maybe like a 50 or an 85? Can you just kind of talk about that for a moment?
Actually 35 millimeter, the 23 that I have is 35 equivalent, as you said, is really an ideal street lens. It's not too wide, but you can still get some pretty cool portraits too with it. If anything, I'll go wider. If I go any closer, and I have a 35, which is a 50 equivalent, and I'm always too close. I have to step back because I'm so used to my focal length. And it's really, there are things that you need to decide before you press that shutter. First of all, whether it's going to be black and white or color. Even if I make that decision in camera before I press the shutter, but that is an important creative decision that you shouldn't wait till you see the picture in Lightroom to make. You should always make that decision before you press the shutter, even if you shoot raw. Practice making that decision. Why is it a stronger black and white? Why would it be stronger in color? And knowing your focal length so that you can move quickly. I'm so familiar with that focal length that I don't have to even think. I won't have to crop because I know exactly where I need to stand to get exactly the frame the way I want the final image to be. I mean, sometimes I'll have to crop because I can't, there is something that prevents me from getting closer, if it's somebody up a window or something, but usually I do very, very little cropping. If anything, I'll straighten the verticals and that's it. So that's the advantage of working with a fixed focal length and the consistency in the focal length. And also in a body of work, it's nice to have that consistency. If you jump from 23 to 35 to 80 and back, it looks a little odd in a body of work or in a series. So it's good to keep that consistency. But to challenge myself, actually, I'm working on my personal project, The Artist in the Space, with a 35 millimeter on my X Pro 2. It's a really fast lens, a 1.2, because sometimes I'm a 1.4. I'm in a really dark studio, so I needed the fastest prime. And it's challenging for me because, again, it feels really tight, but it's also good to mix it up and not get stuck. You need to be flexible. But for street, it's 23. And I do have a 23 for my X Pro 2, which is my waterproof kit, but it's the same focal length. So it's basically a different camera, but exact same focal length. And I think that's important.
How often are you with a rangefinder camera? I know when you get really comfortable with it, oftentimes you don't even need to look through the viewfinder. Now, this question isn't going to apply to a lot of the listeners, but it's interesting to me is how often are you looking through to get the perfect composition compared to how often are you in a situation where you are involved in that moment as well, that you just know where to point your camera and take that photo?
Actually, I never look through the viewfinder. I use live view because I think although this one doesn't have a tilt screen, I think if you look through the viewfinder all the time, you tend to shoot everything at eye level. Although, yes, you can go down on your knees and so forth, but I never look at the viewfinder. So my photographs are much more dynamic that way because I can shoot lower, higher. I can have more reach too because I'm shooting wide. So just that arm's reach can get me closer to what I want. That also helps without your body, without physically getting closer. And now wait, your question was, I forgot the question. So yeah, going back to the being familiar with the focal length is important because, and looking through the viewfinder, that's what the question was, sorry. You're right, because I know that focal length so well, I don't need to look at the viewfinder half the time because I know exactly what I'm going to get because it's more of an extension of me. And sometimes you're in a situation where, for example, you're sitting across somebody really interesting in the subway in New York, You don't want them to know that you're taking a picture of them, because if they notice you, whatever caught your attention in the first place is going to be gone. So then why take the picture? It won't make any sense. So just to really be more invisible, just shooting completely blind is good. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it absolutely made sense for sure. And like you said, if you're sitting across from somebody on the subway, that's why it makes sense to know your settings, so you don't have to hold up the camera, do that test.
But that said, if you're shooting with a camera that you have to bring it to your eye, then just be completely open. Don't try to sneak the shot. Just, I used to
slowly
shoot.
bring the camera.
Yeah, I know, but I used to shoot people on the subway or in the metro in Paris with a DSLR. It's noisy. I had to bring it to my eye. I never used it on live view, and I just went for it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
don't try to sneak the shot.
So we mentioned black and whites there, as that's one of the big things that you should make that decision before you press the shutter. Know whether or not a photo should be black and white. When I think of street photography, I think of black and white photography. Can you tell me why that is? I have no idea why that is.
It's easier, first of all, and I think it's because you think of the classics. But black and white is a little bit easier because you have less distractions, and sometimes that timeless quality of the black and white photograph. So black and white as also a mood that works well with street photography. So those are really important things to consider in your choice. But sometimes it's all about the color, and a lot of street photographers will only shoot color or only shoot black and white. I do a lot of both, because I let the subject make that decision. If the subject, it's all about color, it would make no sense to shoot it in black and white. But on the other hand, if there's this amazing subject, but then there's the awful, colorful distraction, then of course it's going to be stronger in black and white. So I make those decisions. If I can't make the decision on the spot, then my camera will be on film simulation bracketing, where I actually have the options. But I think it's really important. It's very, very rare that you'll ever hesitate between one or the other in post-processing. It's very rare that the photograph would be equally strong in color or in black and white. Very rare.
Another side question, as a Fuji fan myself, what are your favorite color and black and white Fuji film simulations?
I only shoot classic chrome in color only, and I've shot a lot of color since they came up with classic chrome, because I think classic chrome has that timeless quality to it, and it just fits my style of photography. So I shoot classic chrome and then acros and black and white. And for example, I was just in Havana and I shot more black and white than color, and there was room for both. Definitely. I just published a YouTube video with a selection of 70 some of my photographs from Havana, and they start with color and they go into black and white. But those were decisions that I mostly made on the spot. Sometime I was in film simulation, so I actually had both at the end of the day. But sometimes the color will distract from the mood or from the expression. And a place like Havana is so colorful that sometimes it's just too colorful. And then it doesn't translate that emotion like a black and white will. If you remove color distraction, your viewer will stay on the subject a lot longer. If you have so much, it's so busy around your subject, the viewer will go to the human face and then will look all around and not stay on the human face long enough. So
I'm glad that you covered that. That was my exact question. I've never been to Cuba, but from every photo I've seen, it seems so colorful. And I'm glad that you gave an explanation as to why black and white works better in a very colorful situation like that. So this is my last question. I think I'm really excited for this episode, but I know that we've gone over our time together. So I got this one last question for you. And that is, if you had to go back to when you bought that first film camera, you moved to Minneapolis, you bought that first camera that's been 20 years now. After 20 years of knowledge, what do you wish that you could go back and tell a young 1998 Valerie about photography that would help her today?
I think I pretty much learned as I was doing it, not to get stuck and not to I even shot weddings back then. You have to try everything when you don't know what you want to do. And I didn't pursue them because I really did enjoy them. But a lot of people stay stuck in something and they feel, oh, well, that's all I can do. But no, you're never stuck. And always, that's one thing, always work on personal project, because at one point early on in my career of working for clients, it became a job. And it took me a little while to realize why. It's because I was not working on personal projects. So I wasn't feeding my creative soul. I was only working for other people. And so it took me a little while, but I finally realized what was happening, and I started working on a personal project and sharing that work, the personal work. Share that work separately from your commercial work if need be, but share that work on a blog or something, but continue to work on personal project, because at one point I was this close to quitting photography altogether because it had become a job. I was working for clients, and there is no way I was going to bring that camera out on weekends if I didn't have to.
Right.
And I didn't want to post-process any more pictures, certainly not pictures that I would do on my own time. And that's when I realized that you run into that risk whenever you turn your passion into a profession. And if you can stay a hobby photographer forever, if you can afford it, stay a hobbyist photographer. I feel like I'm back to being a hobbyist now because I sell my vision. I don't shoot for clients anymore. So I'm shooting 100% from me, and there's no better place for a photographer to be.
Wow.
There.
That is definitely something that I know is going to resonate with a lot of photographers, as now is definitely a time where a lot of people feel like they have, like if they're holding a camera, they have to go into business for themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to do that, and I'm glad that you shared that. I'm glad that you shared that perspective for sure.
Professional photographer doesn't mean that they're better than the hobbyist photographer.
Very true. I look at some of the members in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group and think, what am I doing? Like, look at these photos. They're great. They're great. Well, Valerie, again, thank you so much for your time coming on the show. Before I let you go, can you let the listeners know where they can find you online and keep up with you?
Well, everything is under Valerie Jardin, Valerie Jardin, and I rank pretty high on Google, so a search you'll have everything, but everything is on my website, valeriejardin.com, whether it's the books, the webinars, the podcast, Hit the Streets on iTunes, and everything else I do, the blogs and so forth.
All right, huge thank you to Valerie for coming on the podcast. This week's action item, which is the one thing that if you implement it this week will move the needle forward in your photography journey, is this. Find the light, then place your subject. This one honestly really helped me to create much more interesting images. So when building a photo, I think that we typically just start with the subject first. I have a person, I need to photograph them, what can I do with them? That's how I got started. That's, again, I think how everybody pretty much looks at how to build a photo. But I want to challenge you to first look for the light and then place your subject there. Now, in the case of street photography, you could find beautiful light and then just wait for something interesting to happen there. In the case of portrait photography, you would find beautiful light and then place your subject in it and then give them an action or something interesting to do. Now, I fully understand that may seem like, okay, well, you got 6 of one and half a dozen of another, but I promise you it's not two of the same thing. This is a fundamentally different approach to the way that you capture images by, completely seeing the scene in front of you and interacting with it entirely different. Having a subject and trying to place them into the world is like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. But looking for beautiful light and then placing your subject in there is a much more harmonious experience when it comes to photography. And again, I understand that it may seem very similar, but it won't be until you try it that you'll realize how much more of a game changer it is. And I would love to see whatever you come up with. Feel free to share it in the Beginner Photography Podcast community. It is a free, an amazing community that is also the safest place on the internet for new photographers like yourself. So feel free to come join us. There's more than 6,000 fellow listeners like yourself. You can join right now, again, for free over at beginnerphotopod.com/group. That is it for today. Until next week, remember, the more that you shoot today, the better of a photographer you will be tomorrow. Talk soon. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. Start a conversation. Grow together. That is it for this week. Remember, the more that you shoot today, the better of a photographer you will be tomorrow. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.